Alright, this is the chapter of transport in mammals. Today we have to discuss about cardiac cycle. To know the cycle in the heart, which is comprising about of zero point 0.8 second, let's see this animation first. This is something I showed you last time too, where you can see that the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood is coming to the respective atria. You know that the left side of the heart is containing oxygenated blood, while the right side of the heart is containing deoxygenated blood. The blue portion, the blue coloration, is indicating the presence of deoxygenated blood, while the coloration of red, the color of red is showing you the presence of oxygenated blood. You can see that both the atria are contracting simultaneously and they are pouring or pumping the blood into the respective ventricles. On the other hand, both the ventricles are contracting again simultaneously and are pumping the blood to aortic arch and pulmonary arch. If you can see, we can see different valves here. If you know from our last lecture, I told you there are atrioventricle valves. Atrioventricle valves means the valves which are present between atria and ventricle. They are named as tricuspid and bicuspid valves. On the other hand, we have semilunar valves in aortic and pulmonary arch. You can see once the tricuspid and bicuspid valve open, the blood from the atria is pumped into the respective ventricles. And when the ventricles contract, atrioventricle valves, that is the bicuspid and tricuspid valve, they close, while the semilunar valve in aortic and pulmonary arch open, so that when the ventricles pump the blood only goes into aortic and pulmonary arch and is not flown back or pumped back into the respective atria. So the main function of these valves is to prevent the backflow of blood and to ensure that the blood flows in only one direction in the heart. Now let's see what cardiac cycle is. It is represented by two processes. One is called diastole, the other is called systole. Diastole is actually the ventricle relaxation. As the ventricles relax, the drop in the blood pressure causes the semilunar valves in the aortic and pulmonary arch to close. The atria starts to fill the blood, and as the pressure increases, blood starts to trickle down into the respective ventricles. On the other hand, systole is ventricle contraction. Systole is the state when the ventricles contract and pump the blood into aortic and pulmonary arch. Both of these processes are shown here in the form of a graph. Don't panic to see this complicated graph. It's very easy to understand. I will dissect this graph into different stages and will elaborate each step one by one. If you can see, I have labeled them as 1, 2, 3 and 4, where there would be different things which would be happening. What I have done is I have shown the time on x-axis and pressure on the y-axis. On the other hand, the graph lines are shown in different colors. There is a blue color, there's green, and this is the pink color line, which is showing you the pressure in ventricles, in atria and in aorta. This line is showing you the pressure in aorta, while the green color line is showing you the pressure in ventricles. The lower one in blue color is showing you pressure in the atrias. So let's discuss one step one by one to analyze that what is happening throughout this time period. Keep in mind that one heartbeat is one cardiac cycle. One cardiac cycle consists of one systole and one diastole. One ventricle systole and one ventricle diastole will make up one heartbeat, and it takes about 0.8 seconds. So this is the first step of the graph. It is where the atria contract forcing the blood into the relaxed ventricle. This causes a slight increase in both the atrial and ventricular pressure. If you can see in the graph here, the first step here, which is being dissected here in this slide, the first part or the first stage is of atrial contraction, and because when the atria contract, they will pump the blood towards the respective ventricles. This is the second stage where the ventricles have started to contract. This is called ventricle systole. The ventricle pressure increases. This causes the atrioventricular valves to close, producing a loud lub sound and prevents the backflow of blood into the atria. I told you in the first slide that whenever the ventricles will be contracting, the bicuspid and tricuspid valve will close so that the blood does not go back into the respective atria but is only allowed to move forward into aortic and pulmonary arch. So if you are being asked that which valves are closed or which valves are open at stage 2, you should be able to know this, that whenever the ventricle contracts, the bicuspid and tricuspid valves will close, while the semilunar valves present in aortic and pulmonary arch will open, so that the blood from the respective ventricles will go into the pulmonary arch or in aortic arch. This is the third stage where the pressure in the ventricles becomes higher than that of aorta and pulmonary artery, so that the semilunar valves will open because of this pressure and the blood would flow into the aorta and the pulmonary artery. This is the fourth step where the ventricles have started to relax. Keep in mind that ventricles, when relaxed, we call it diastole or ventricular diastole. This is called diastole because of the fact that here the drop in the pressure in the ventricles causes the semilunar valves to close, and this will produce a soft dub sound. This prevents the backflow of blood into the ventricles. So now we know that the ventricles are relaxing. So when they are relaxing, they are actually being filled with blood from the atria. When ventricles are relaxing, atria would be contracting, pumping their blood to the respective ventricles. So whenever a chamber is in relaxed stage, it is being filled with blood, while when any chamber is contracting, it is pumping the blood to the next organ or part of the organ. This is the fifth, sixth and seventh stage. The fifth stage shows you that the pressure in the ventricles continues to decrease as they relax. You can see that the curve of ventricular pressure is going down, showing you decrease in the pressure. At point 6, the atrioventricular valves open as pressure in the ventricle becomes lower than that in the atria. At 7th stage, the pressure in the ventricles will start to increase gradually as blood is continues being pumped into the ventricles from the atria. So this cycle will repeat itself from this point. It will start right from the first stage again. So from point 1 to 7, this was one cardiac cycle, and one cardiac cycle consisted of one ventricular systole and one ventricular diastole, making up one heartbeat.